All right, DJ, so the first tip that I want to go over is practicing without using your headphones. Now, in the event that you go to a party or a club or whatever, a wedding, whatever event that you're DJing, in the event that you do not have your headphones, whether that be if you have battery power headphones and they die, whether you forgot them at home, whether they break, your jack doesn't work, so many different reasons why your headphones may not work. You need to practice without using your headphones. And you can practice without using your headphones simply by firing up your DJ equipment. Let's say you have these two songs playing, and what you want to do is, if you're introing a song or you're bringing a song in, usually as DJs, we get used to having our headphones in using cue so we can hear the next song coming up to make sure it's perfectly on beat. But instead of doing that, you can just use your waveforms. So if I have this song playing on the right-hand side, if you don't have headphones on, what you want to do first is make sure your BPMs are matching. And then you want to just get comfortable with starting your song using the waveform. So right now I have no headphones on. I'm waiting for the one. So I'm gonna go right here. And as you can see, my lines are a little bit off. So all I'm gonna do is speed this up just a little bit. Now you can see my lines are perfectly on beat. And of course, just because you can't hear them in your headphones, you will be able to hear them through whatever speakers you're shooting your audio out of. Or sometimes when you're not using your headphones, there is a little bit of a delay if you have no reference speaker pointing towards you. So that's another thing to practice. If you, for whatever reason, don't have a reference speaker, you still want to be able to DJ, you still want to be able to be comfortable. And the only way to do that really is by knowing your waveforms. And you can tell that everything is on beat by simply looking at your waveforms, and you don't have to worry about sound whatsoever. Tip number 2 is only using your crossfader to scratch or to go between songs. So if you're doing a hard cut, whether that's like you're using an effect where you're doing like a double where you're going back and forth on a song, or if you're just making a hard cut from one side to the other side, for me personally, that's the only time I'm really using the crossfader. I do not believe it's a smart thing to really use the crossfader to necessarily mix. So if you're a scratch DJ, you most likely already have your curve set all the way to the right, which essentially means that if you have your crossfader in the middle and you have two songs playing, both of these songs will be playing. If you happen to move to the left or to the right, you'll see that nothing happens. The only time something happens is if you're all the way to the right, which only makes your right deck play, or if you're all the way to the left, which makes your left deck play. So some people, if you have your curve set to the middle, in that case, when you go to the left, it starts fading out the song, or if you start going to your right, it also starts fading out the song until you get all the way to the right, and then this song will be playing. Now, instead of mixing that way, I like to focus on using my faders only. I leave the crossfader simply to just do, like I said, for scratching. So when you're literally scratching, or for when you're doing hard cuts from your left deck to your right deck. So again, if you're fading in a song, instead of using your crossfader, practice using slowly pushing up your crossfader. Same thing with the other side, slowly pushing this up. Or even if you are fading in a song and fading out a song, practice simply doing this motion instead of using your crossfader. So make sure you're definitely practicing that. You want to be comfortable using your faders. Tip number 3, hand placement on your platter. Now, of course, some of you have DJ controllers. Those all will vary in size of your actual platter. Some of you, I'm sure, have Rain. Some of you, I'm sure, have actual turntables, which most likely are the same exact size as the Rain. But again, some of you have smaller controllers. So based on the size of your controller or your turntable, just try to emulate what I'm doing as best as you can, even though I know it won't match up necessarily perfectly because of the different sizes. What you want to do when you're scratching is have a really light hold on your platter. You don't want to be pressing down too hard when you're moving back and forth, especially if you have a turntable that's no good whatsoever. You can sometimes get away with it with the controller, but just practicing being really light on your turntable. I like to place my hand right about here, and I'm usually only using 3 fingers or 2 fingers. You'll notice that when you have to do something very quick, such as like a scribble scratch, so if you're going like this, just a quick forward and back, using 2 fingers will help you be a little bit lighter on the platter. Sometimes even using 1 finger, you can go even quicker with 1 finger. You don't really want to have 5 fingers ever on the platter at once. Even 4 fingers can be a bit much. So I recommend using 3, sometimes even 2, depending on the scratch that you're doing. And like I said, again, you want to be right about here. So if we're going to 9 o'clock directly over, you're gonna place your right hand right about here. And as you can see, I'm on my right deck. So on your right deck, your hand will go here. This is your motion going forward and back, forward and back, forward and back. Then on the left deck, it's gonna be the exact same thing, except your hand, instead of being on the inside. And of course, you can do it any way you like. This is just my recommendations and how I learned and what works best for me and which is easiest for me. So on the left deck, you're gonna have your hand again on the 9 o'clock spot, except this time we're on the outside of the platter opposed to the inside. So same motion, holding it lightly with 3 fingers, sometimes 2, right at that 9 o'clock mark, and just practice going forward and back, forward and back. Sometimes moving your hand a little bit farther down helps as well. So definitely, I don't want to say just 9 o'clock and that's the end of it. You want to always have it at 9 o'clock. If you feel that moving it down a little bit is helpful or moving it up a little bit is helpful, definitely do you, see what works best for you. But as a starting point, I would say 9 o'clock. Sometimes I do catch myself going at around 8 or 7, just to give me a little bit more range of motion. But if I'm just literally grabbing the platter quickly, I'm right about 9 o'clock. Now we're gonna move on to tip number 4, which is perfecting the chirp scratch. So go ahead and get a song playing. As you can see, mine is on the right deck. I actually have it playing. And a chirp scratch simply sounds just like this. We're just pushing the platter forward and cutting a sound, then we're pulling it back and we're opening the crossfader. So it sounds just like this. So problems sometimes arise if you push your platter forward and you cut the sound too fast, which makes it sound like this. Sometimes you're not pushing far enough forward before you actually cut the sound. So my recommendation is, a good way to practice is literally being a little bit dramatic and cutting the crossfader a little bit late. So all you do is you push the platter forward and then you cut. So obviously that's not a great sounding chirp scratch, but right now we're just practicing the fundamentals of pushing it forward and then cutting. Pushing it forward, then cutting. Coming back isn't as hard as going forward. So when you're coming back, we're just gonna open the crossfader and then we're gonna pull back. Okay? So again, all you're gonna do is push forward, cut, then we're gonna open the crossfader and pull back. Okay, so practice that a couple times really slowly, or practice it as much as you need to until you start getting into the rhythm of pushing forward and then cutting, so you're not cutting too early. After you get comfortable with doing it slowly, then you can start speeding it up and then trying to do your cuts a little bit faster, because eventually the chirp scratch should be really natural. You shouldn't really be thinking in your head, oh, I have to push forward enough before I cut. It should start just feeling natural. But always going slow first helps.